Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 1.73 podcast. Today's International Podcast Day, and so we thought we'd take this chance to put our marketing on the world amongst everybody else doing a podcast today, and just talk about our favorite podcasts, why we listen to them, and the importance of podcasts in general, and how it kind of aligns with our pursuit or mission, rather, of learning every day. So we're going to go over our top 3 favorite podcasts and go from there. So, Dad, I'll have you go first with your first favorite podcast.
First favorite podcast. So this is interesting because I'm sitting here looking at I happen to use Spotify more than anything else. It's almost like the top 3 categories versus, because there's a bunch of them, right? Coming up with 3 individual podcasts is close to impossible, I'm experiencing. All right, but right off the bat here, so like current events, culture, and I know there's going to be a bunch of people that'll listen to this, and they're going to say, now I don't like that guy anymore. So there's certainly some risk in sharing what our podcasts are. With the clients, I oftentimes ask in the beginning of our strategic planning sessions, we'll ask 3 questions. Question 2 and question 3 are always the same. What's your most important unanswered question about the team or business? And then third one is, what are your expectations for a great day? So those 2 are regular, but I always change up the first one. And a lot of times I've asked, if we looked at your podcast playlist, what would we find? Because it can tell you an awful lot about people. Anyway, so folks listening to this, I will let you form your opinions about me once I share these. Okay, the Tucker Carlson show. He's like cilantro. I actually found, I've not met someone yet that kind of likes cilantro. You either totally love cilantro or you flipping hate cilantro. And I think Tucker's probably a little bit like that. I'm like, anyway, the point is, so why? He brings in some really great guests. Also, he is absolutely willing to be wrong. He asks incredibly challenging questions. So I don't think he's the only one. He doesn't have a corner in the market on that. But it's one of those where I find that his conversations are very compelling and they're fascinating because the topics are almost always something that's currently going on. Do you want me to share more, or do you want to share one?
I'll do my top one. That's a good answer, Tucker Carlson. That's a good one. I think that cilantro analogy is very apt. It probably will be.
You probably would feel the other way. I'd never listen to that guy.
No, I do listen to his podcast. It's not in my top 3, but I listen to it. It's kind of like cilantro on the side. My favorite podcast is, and this may also be somewhat controversial, is the Jordan B. Peterson podcast. And I like his because it is kind of for the opposite reason you like Tucker. It's very inward oriented and it focuses on the individual and striving to build yourself up as an individual. I think he always has really, really interesting guests on who do talk about current events, but also that talk about the state of the individual in 2025. And I think it goes overlooked, or it may get lost in the wave of current events that happen in our world today that, we need to take some time to slow down and focus inward. We can't solve anybody's problems until we start solving our own, right? It's like the oxygen mask in a plane. Put yours on before you put others on. So I like his for those reasons. And I also like some of the series he's been putting out about, he's had people call in, just normal everyday people, to answer questions. And so it's a breath of fresh air amongst the current event. I don't want to say fear mongering, but we do live in a crazy world and crazy times, and that's a lot of what we hear today. So hopping on his podcast and just hearing about, how can I better my life, XYZ, and focusing on inward is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Henry. He's constantly challenging us to grow and develop and to be responsible. Like, he actually used responsibility and accountability as a tool of production versus something to run away from or relinquish in some fashion. It also means that there's kind of a steep slope to some of the things that he would invite us to consider. Again, I like how you put it, like just the challenge of it, right? It really does challenge.
Yeah.
Okay, my next one is The Knowledge Project. The Knowledge Project. A gentleman by the name of Shane Parrish puts this out. It's awesome. He covers, so he both interviews people and then kind of gives almost like a brief biography and reflection on those personalities, those people that have made a difference in our lives that are no longer with us. So one of the things too is if you go to FS, so like franksam.blog, so it's Farnham Street. If you just Google farnhamstreet.blog or fs.blog, I highly recommend to anybody listening, sign up for Shane's once a week, early Sunday mornings you get it, and it's just full of a ton of wisdom. Well, he's carried that over into this amazing podcast. One of my favorites, because I knew who Katharine Graham was, but she took over the Washington Post in 1963, and the challenges that she was up against on a few different levels. Probably at that point, like number one, just being a woman. Number two, the manner in which she acquired the Washington Post was a crazy and fascinating story. But Shane's reflection on like who Katharine Graham was and how we might look at not just what she accomplished in life, but what her accomplishments, what her trials, tribulations, her challenges, and then her successes actually offer all of us, because there's plenty of things I know that I've been up against and realized that this woman was up against far greater odds and just kept moving forward. And it was, I remember listening to that thinking, man, I've just got to, how do I say this? Stop whining and crying as much as I do about things, because anyway, just an amazing story. And he's got a whole bunch of them on that podcast. Great stuff.
So is it more history oriented on people from the past, or is it a little bit of both, past and current?
Well, so history, like on that, let's see, who's he more recently? Let's see, there's one here. So this Lulu Cheng Meservey, I don't know who she is, but the topic was like how to build a cult. So this is like real live, like Lulu's, alive and well, and is, what does he say? She's one of the sharpest minds in communications and strategy. She's helped some of the best leaders through their hardest moments. So we talk about why trust and conviction are contagious, how to win attention in a noisy world, and how to handle attacks without losing ground. So she's a communications and strategy expert or specialist. And that, again, fascinating, because I think one of the reasons why Knowledge Project has been so interesting is it covers a pretty wide breadth of things, but all coming back to, here are individuals that had a mission. They were willing to go through the ordeal, and they came out the other side smarter, stronger, faster, which you and I both love the hero's journey concept. And just anytime I can listen to something that follows that model, it's always intriguing.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to check that one out, because I have not heard of it until this moment. So I'm sold. I'll check it out. My number 2 spot, some people may think it as a throwaway or stereotypical, but I have to go to the Joe Rogan Experience.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not because he talks about archery and jujitsu and, UFOs, all that stuff, but
ayahuasca.
Yeah, exactly. It's not because of that. I I appreciate his podcast because he's always willing to have someone who he disagrees with on. And I think that, especially in today's world, is more important than ever. Being able to sit down with someone you disagree with and talk through ideas, and who knows, maybe you don't agree with the idea you originally had or vice versa. And I think he's always had a good Rolodex of guests that come on and disagree with him, and he talks through ideas with them, and it's just again, it's a good breath of fresh air where people can sit down and disagree with one another. I always enjoy those. And sometimes he's got the Matthew McConaughey or the Hollywood elites on, and it's like, all right, that's cool, but do I really care? Yeah, do I care what Matthew McConaughey is doing? Not really. But when he has more, I don't want to say every day, because you do have to be a certain status to get on the Joe Rogan Experience, but people that are a little more grounded, it's always good to listen to those just in the background while doing something. It's just nice to hear people talk through ideas.
Yeah, and I don't know if you listened to, this is going back to, I think, April of this year, of Dave Smith and Douglas Murray. He had both of them on, and it was this awesome debate, right? Like, almost like, I don't want to say conservative, liberal perspectives, but more like almost like collective, like the collectivist perspective versus a very individual perspective or individualistic perspective. And the bottom line is, like, it was so terrific to be able to witness two people who see the world very differently. They rolled up their sleeves a little bit and took a couple of punches, so to speak, or swung a few. But it was all in service of, like, let's figure out, like, let's find the truth. And, like, you've got your path and I've got my path. But, that's what I think Rogan does an amazing job, especially in those situations, of pulling out what people, how they see the world, what they believe is right and wrong. And there are some, fascinating, well, combine the, Peterson's not been on the Rogan podcast for quite some time, but there's probably 6 or 8 visits or appearances of Peterson on Rogan's podcast. And it's fantastic. Especially too, I like about Rogan is, like, that dude goes like 2 hours at a minimum. And that's something where, you and I talked about this, Henry, of, like, the opportunities that podcasts create is to either counteract or provide an alternative to the soundbite world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
Because soundbites, there's no context. So how can you actually interpret accurately what somebody meant with a 6-word soundbite?
Right. And to think that you could condense a very in-depth, controversial topic that affects either your life or everybody's life into a 30-second clip, I think is naive. I think, obviously he was one of the pioneers of the whole podcast world, and being able to have conversations for that long and really dig into topics, I think it reminds us that we do need to take the time to really think through, what we believe in and have the discourse to kind of sharpen those beliefs with each other. I think it's important to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna remember. I'm never gonna be able to find it, I don't think. It may have been Peterson, somebody else. We cannot think our way to solutions. We must talk our way to solutions, and that requires some form of a dialogue, not a monologue. And even taking it further, like Rogan's podcast, frankly, has actually helped me understand the value of, like, sitting down and having dinner with your family, or sitting down and having dinner with your friends, and having it be a 2 or 3 hour affair, not let's just grab a quick bite to eat, because that's like just conversation of soundbite versus really digging into what's meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Number 3 for you.
3. Oh my gosh, man. All right. So there's a few that fall into a category. I mean, this is so tough. So Chris Williamson has Modern Wisdom. It's a little bit like what you shared about Rogan. Like some of the guests, like I don't really care. Others are absolutely intriguing. So I highly recommend Modern Wisdom is one. But I think the kind of the category versus one particular one is like faith is an enormous part of our life. It's certainly an enormous part of my life. And so Father Mike Schmitz, his podcast, the Father Leo Show. And then let's see, what's the other one? And then this young priest, Father David Michael Moses. I know somebody in our life, so we know quite well. What is it? Mom likes to say that. I love priests because they have lots of wisdom, and especially if they're kind of cute, that's even better. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those where they're just great because I know for me. Religion can seem stuffy, can seem constricting, suffocating, wrought with all sorts of rules and regulations. And, there's certainly aspects of it that can, I would not disagree with some of that, but like making our faith real. And, certainly as Catholics, like that's what resonates. But I think for any of us that have a faith life and are pursuing a faith journey in some way, shape, or form, to have like these podcasts make like applying the belief systems or ideology of our faith helps make it current, helps us understand how to apply these ideas to like what's actually going on, and not from a judgmental perspective, but like, have you considered it this way? And so it just is for me personally, just one of the best ways I've found to get in touch with my faith is listening to these podcasts.
So if you're a guy, you come for the content. If you're a gal, you come for the good looks with these.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah, sounds about right. I think my number 3 is probably, and it's going to be a different shift, is the St. Brown podcast. This is the podcast with Amon-Ra and Equanimous St. Brown. Amon-Ra is a wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. Equanimous, I believe, is now on the San Francisco 49ers. And I like listening to their podcast during the football season. They put it on. They have Lions teammates on. Obviously, we're Lions fans here, so, sorry, not sorry. And I just appreciate their banter. It's that, like, locker room, brother on brother banter that is just really, they're funny. They have funny guests on, and it's cool getting an inside look into, like, what it's like to play in the NFL, like the things these guys have to go through both personally and professionally. You got guys from all different walks of life that play in the NFL, and it's really cool to just listen to their story, and gain a deeper appreciation for what these guys, like the lifestyle these guys live through, because it's like, a guy drops a pass and we all scream at the TV, this guy sucks. We take it personal, but, he's got a family he's trying to provide for. Obviously he's making a boatload of money, so he'll be all right no matter what if he drops that pass or catches it. But it's still just a really cool and really funny podcast to listen to, and it's a nice break from all the seriousness and all the craziness. It's a nice escape from all that.
I would imagine like it allows you to get connected to the real people.
Yeah.
Like they're just like, you know what? They put their clothes on probably the same way you put your clothes on, or they, at least in the United States, get behind the wheel on the left side of the car, in the front seat, ideally. Yeah, it can normalizes things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it makes it fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun.
So Henry, like, why do you listen to podcasts? Because you could spend your time doing a lot of other things.
That's true. That's true. Well, in the age of doom scrolling and shorts and short-term dopamine spikes, which I do fall victim to, I will say I do fall victim to that. I kind of what you touched on earlier. It's a good antithesis to the soundbite short-term culture, I guess we live in, the immediate gratification. It's like, okay, I'm gonna sit down, or I go to the gym, or you go on a walk, or you're driving somewhere. You throw on a podcast instead of music, or the news or something else, and you actually listen to a whole conversation with one, two, three people, and have them just break down any idea. And I think whatever the topic is, if I find it remotely interesting, I'll listen to it, and it's just a nice break. I feel like there's some like physical feeling I get in my head where I'm like, okay, I don't need to be looking for the next piece of entertainment. Like, for example, if I'm scrolling on like YouTube or something, and I'm like, okay, that was funny, okay, that was interesting, okay, oh, that's cool, okay, and you're like constantly resetting, and then you like turn your phone off and you like forget everything you just listened to. Versus podcasts, you go to the gym, you're driving, and by the end of the podcast, you're like, wow, like that was a really interesting idea. It's like you were almost there for the conversation, and you can remember more of it. You can think about it more, and it's a nice disconnect from that short-term media world. And also, it's just like the pursuit of learning. Like, I always want to learn something new every day. I have my planner, our little check boxes every day to do whatever. I have like read/learn in it. I always want to read something, or I always want to learn something. And whether that's learning about how St. Brown puts on, if he does sock, or sock cleat when getting dressed in the locker room, or if it's, learning about current events on the other side of the world. It's just that pursuit of learning.
Yeah, I mean, I aligned with all that. Probably, especially the namesake of this podcast, 1.73, the giveaway is like, oh, that was a cumulative high school GPA. Like, how the heck did this guy ever leave high school? Well, clearly I didn't like the classroom, but podcasts have become a classroom. Like, they become just a rich source of learning. I think that's probably the most enjoyable thing, is just the constant thirst to just be introduced to something new, be introduced. And this is challenging sometimes, because I think the next question we were just going to unpack is like, what are the opportunities and or risks that podcasts create? Certainly one of the risks is you can find yourself inside of echo chamber, right? Like, I only listen to this type of content. I only listen to this type of podcast that basically delivers the exact same message. I find that more aligned with, I don't watch the news. I intentionally watched the news in almost a decade. I mean, sure, it's on from time to time, but there's been more an emphasis on like, I just want to stay away from that, because everyone's got an agenda. There's certainly everyone's got an agenda on the podcast, but it's, going from, you wouldn't know this because you're still way too young, but like back in the dark ages, when like horse and buggy days, when I was much younger, like there were 3 or 4 television stations, and which meant there's like 2 or 3, 4 news sources. Now, I mean, it's hundreds of thousands. And so the variety is fascinating, which for me is part of that opportunity. I mean, for us to be like, you're located where you are, I'm located where I am, and we're doing a podcast, and hopefully somebody's getting something out of this. Maybe it's a new podcast to listen to. Maybe it's a reflection on like, why do you listen to podcasts? But it makes our voice available. And again, this is going to paint a picture of me for those that are listening. I am certainly an enormous First Amendment person, and the freedom of speech is one of the greatest gifts that we have here in this country. And podcasts are just wonderful. They're wonderful mechanisms to support that. That I may disagree vehemently with you, but your voice still gets to be heard. Like I don't want your voice to be silenced. And anyway, not to get controversial or political in any way, shape, or form. I think just the opportunity with podcasts, and perhaps some of the risk. The opportunity is all of our voices can be heard. The risk is you might hear something that doesn't sound so good.
Yeah, I like it. I think we'll end it on that message. Thank you, everybody, for listening in on International Podcast Day. I hope this kind of different episode helped people either find a new favorite podcast or just think about, the importance of conversation more so than just podcasts, the importance of conversation, being able to converse with one another. So we really appreciate you listening in. Dad, do you have anything else?
Or they are welcome, maybe listening to this gets them to just say, and I think I'm going to unsubscribe from this Bozo's 1.73.
You know what? Anyway. If you're not pissing a couple people off along the way.
Yeah, we're not doing our job.
We're not doing our job. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in the next one.